Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, I'm going to read this story out. There's two articles I want to get through. Both of them deal with racism within the Northern Territory Police. They're both regarding the one story that was the shooting death of Kumanjayi Walker, and what happened there back several years ago now by then police officer Rolfe, Mr. Rolfe. So the report's interesting to what the coroner has said. I'll tell you now, I had a lot of experiences with racist police officers while I was working in the Queensland Police Service, specifically when I was doing general duties and going into different areas and working. The attitudes that were towards Indigenous people, I felt was just nothing, just blatant racism at times, blatant racism. And then other times it was a bit more subdued, a bit more, like things like I told a story about how, we went to in Queensland drinking in public. You're not allowed to drink in public, drink alcohol in public, consume alcohol, consume liquor in a public space, I think it is. But going to a park and an Indigenous group was sitting around a table having some beers. I think it was VB. There wasn't anything unruly going on or anything like that. And we tipped out the beers. I think they confiscated maybe the alcohol that was still unused. Anyway, I thought at the time, okay, I didn't like it. I didn't think it was necessary to really take the other alcohol, but whatever. That was the law. That was part of the law. The issue it really irked me was I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day, going out with the same police officer, and when there was a group of Caucasian people sitting in the park, drinking alcohol, consuming alcohol. Then there was nothing said. We went up and spoke to the people. I just let it go because I thought, oh yeah, she's going to go and talk and say, hey, you're not allowed to drink alcohol in public like this. But didn't say a word, not a word. Uh, and I thought later on when we walked away, I questioned her about it. And I can't remember the excuses that she came up with. I think it was just long lines of, well, there was nothing going on. There's nothing unruly kind of happening. So it was all good. I'm like, well, there was nothing unruly when you tipped out the alcohol with the Indigenous people either, but it was just you felt the need to do it. And this kind of attitude, I saw it consistently working in a larger station within Queensland Police Service up. There was heaps of other things a lot worse than that. There was just something I thought was pretty blatant. And she, the officer, she didn't feel like she was being uh, picking on people or being racist or anything like that. That was just necessary for the job, she felt. But I thought it was discrimination. So we didn't agree. Anyway, let's look at this story because the coroner makes a few good points about the attitude, and it's an ongoing attitude. It's an ongoing issue within Northern Territory. So it says the Northern Territory police officer who shot and killed teenager Kumanjayi Walker was racist and worked for an organisation, as in the Northern Territory Police, with the hallmarks of the same attitude. A coronial inquest has found Coroner Elizabeth Armitage handed down her findings into the teenager's death on Monday it was almost 6 years after he was shot by Zachary Rolfe, and concluded that the police officer's racist attitude could have contributed to the incident. She described the death as avoidable. This is the part I think is the most telling, because this is the same thing I've seen, in my opinion, with several shootings that's happened with the Queensland police over the last couple of years. It says this was a case of officer-induced jeopardy, where officers needlessly put themselves in danger, making themselves and others vulnerable, and creating a situation that justifies the use of deadly force. I think we've seen the same thing happening in Queensland over the last couple of years. We've got inexperienced officers who've run into situations. They have created the vulnerable situation. They've placed themselves, they've induced jeopardy, as the coroner said, they've placed themselves in danger, and therefore it justifies the use, pulling out your Glock. So Walker died after being shot 3 times at close range by Rolfe during a botched arrest at a home in the NT community in November 2019. He was wielding a pair of scissors. The 19-year-old was resisting being handcuffed by officers and at one stage stabbed the constable in the neck. Armitage found there was evidence of systemic racism within the police force and was unable to rule out the attitude playing a part in Walker's death. Having considered all the evidence, including Mr. Rolfe's explanations and justifications, I found that Mr. Rolfe was racist and that he worked in and was beneficiary of an organisation with hallmarks of institutional racism. Now, obviously, yeah, he was armed, he had the scissors, and he stabbed the constable in the neck. So once you're going and doing that, the issue is what the coroner is saying, that the officer placed himself in the dangerous situation. And then there's a scuffle ensues, and then he's retaliating. Now he shouldn't have done it, as in Walker shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have been fighting back and all these things. But as a police officer, you're responsible. You need to take responsibility for placing yourself in harm's way and for escalating situations when you can, instead of de-escalating when you can. I want to go to the next article. Acting NT Police Commissioner acknowledges racism within force following the coronial findings. So this is him here. So in short, the NT Acting Police Commissioner Martin Dole has acknowledged a confronting history of racism within the force's ranks, insisting what was tolerated in the past will no longer be acceptable. So he has conceded that all forms of racism have existed within the force throughout its history, calling it a confronting truth that we must face following the release of findings from the inquest into Walker's death. On Monday, NT Coroner Armitage, she handed down those findings. So the recommendations that Armitage found for the NT police force included incorporating the shooting into its recruit training as an example of officer-induced jeopardy. QPS, you need to do the same thing, I would say. You've got enough of your own examples, I would say, of officer-induced jeopardy. And improving its procedures for addressing complaints about racism and use of force against Aboriginal people. She also recommended the force require all officers to spend at least 4 months in a remote posting in their first 3 years on the job. It's funny, I would have thought that would be mandatory when you come out, when you're first on the job in the Northern Territory. Yeah, and I would think, too, this is what should happen in Queensland. Too many police officers that I met, they're stuck down in that southeastern corner. They need to get out. There is so much more benefit to working in a regional area. And if you really want to learn policing, you need to get out, as you can see completely a different attitude with officers who go and perform duty in remote community areas compared to officers who just stay in city areas in the southeast corner and this kind of thing. So yeah, the remote posting in their first 3 years on the job, and develop induction packages specific to each community with the assistance of local elders. Acting Commissioner Dole on Tuesday fronted the media for the first time since the findings. He said police acknowledge coroner's findings that all forms of racism have existed. What was tolerated in the past will no longer be acceptable. And then they go on to give the usual key words that everyone wants to hear. We're committed to stamping out racism in all forms, making this a safer, fairer organisation for everyone. Our response will take time because it must be meaningful and enduring. The Force's Cultural Reform Command Director Leanne Little said the coroner's findings, which included racist attitudes, deeply confronting, but were not new to many Aboriginal people. She said there's still a long way to go. She had seen meaningful change occur across the organisation during the past 12 months, and the Force was now on the right path and developing a dedicated anti-racism strategy, which is now in its final stages. We're working. Here, all the phrases that everyone wants to hear to make everyone feel good. We are working to rebuild trust, not through words alone, but through sustained partnerships, presence, and culturally informed community policing. The past cannot be undone, but the future is ours to shape. You can see the ads right now. It practically writes itself. Like I said, I saw and heard and experienced lots of racism, racist attitudes while I was in the Queensland Police Service. I know of police officers who have, I know one specifically who not long ago resigned from the job and complained about the racism within the job. Mate. And I don't know. I don't know. The problem is, it's not just the problem is that junior officers come in and they learn it really quickly. They see it. They see it. They see it and they hear it. They see it in the attitudes and they hear it spoken by senior officers. So it's all okay. It's easy to justify. In regards to this induced jeopardy, this happens way too often in all of our police precincts, police jurisdictions around Australia, way too often. Police really need to. I think this might have been how Victoria Police was able to lower their numbers, as in with police shooting civilians. They were able to lower their numbers because they had to look at how police were putting themselves in danger and escalating situations. Queensland Police Service, you need to flip and take your blinkers off and look at things properly. You've got far too many police officers that shouldn't be in the job in the first place. Police officers that can't handle the pressures, and police officers who rush in and escalate situations and make things far worse than they should. You need to acknowledge that this is a problem and deal with it before we end up with more shootings and before it ends up costing you more money where there's something that you cannot justify. Because it's always just, oh, got a knife, got a pair of scissors in the hand, got something there, and you sit there going, yeah, but you probably didn't need to get out of the car and make things worse at that time. Someone's standing there and they're the only one on the street, or they're locked in a room and you go and push your way into the room anyway. One day it's going to come out and you're going to end up paying through the nose because of your ignorance and arrogance. Queensland Police leadership. Hey, that's all just my opinion. If we don't have change, we're just going to continue to see more deaths via police hands and more officer-induced jeopardy. Police putting themselves in danger and then justifying their excessive use of force. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Just my opinion. I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening.
And say it isn't real. And please don't go away. Just give me one more day. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. We could start again. We could start again. We could start again.